The life of an 8-year-old boy named Michael seemed calm and familiar. He was an ordinary child who loved to play games, and most of all, he was fond of Minecraft. Minecraft became a haven for him, a place to create and explore endless worlds. As soon as Michael finished his homework, he would immediately sit down at the computer to plunge into virtual adventures. Every day he built incredible castles, mines, and explored wild forests. And like other kids, he loved to be scared. He especially liked mods that added new monsters and dangerous situations to the game. One of such mods was Herobrine Awakened, which he accidentally learnt about on one of the forums. They said that this mod did not just add a new character, but somehow changed the game itself, making it unpredictable. On the evening of the day Michael installed the mod, the house was quiet. His parents had gone to visit the neighbours, and his younger sister Claire was already asleep. The boy switched on the computer, opened Minecraft, and started a new game with the activated mod. The game started as usual. Michael collected some trees, created tools, and went looking for useful resources. After a few minutes, he noticed something strange. Strange figures appeared on the horizon, which did not look like ordinary mobs, nor like the characters he had created. They were dark silhouettes with blank white eyes. It was Herobrin. Suddenly, the game started to lag, and the screen flashed with darkness and strange images. Michael thought it was a bug, and wanted to close the game, but it was as if Minecraft had come to life. The cursor stopped obeying. The computer started making strange sounds. The character in the game moved by itself. He pressed the shutdown button, but nothing happened. The screen pulsed with dark shades until a message appeared in the center. "You opened the doors, and now we are here." The boy felt a cold sweat run down his back. He tossed the mouse aside and tried to unplug the computer, some force holding him in place. The room suddenly became unusually quiet. Even the usual sounds from the window, the rustling of the wind and the barking of dogs, were hushed. And then Michael heard a slight creak outside the door of his room. The door opened slowly, and the boy froze in horror. In front of him stood a silhouette that looked like a character from a game. Tall, angular, with blank white eyes. The figure stepped into his room. It was followed by other creepy figures, smaller in stature. Michael recognized them as creepers, zombies, and other mobs from Minecraft that began to crawl out of the darkness. Michael jumped up from his chair and rushed toward the door, but one of the mobs was faster and grabbed his arm. The cold, dead grip paralyzed the boy, and he collapsed to the floor, watching helplessly as the creatures slowly filled his room. Claire's quiet shriek was heard behind the wall. Michael struggled to free himself, his body feeling petrified. He could only listen to the mobs moving around the house, and his sister continued to scream until her voice was silenced. It was his parents' turn. He could hear them come home and begin to worry about why there were no lights in the house and why their children were unresponsive. Within moments, their anxious voices were replaced by loud screams of terror. Michael realized that the mobs had gotten to them, and there was nothing he could do. The room gradually grew darker, and the sounds began to fade away. The last thing he heard was the rustle of footsteps behind him. Suddenly, everything went silent, and the world was completely dark. Michael woke up in the same room, but it was no longer his. It was a dark, eerie, cold world, more like the ominous virtual expanse of Minecraft. The floor was strewn with blocks of earth. The walls had turned into brick buildings, and there was silence everywhere. He looked around. The mob stood motionless, as if waiting for something. Then a Herobrin appeared right in front of him. His eyes glowed with an icy whiteness, and a voice came from the darkness and said, "You made a mistake when you let us out." Michael realized it wasn't just a mod. It was a trap. The game world was no longer just a virtual reality. It had become his prison. From then on, Michael was forever trapped in that dystopian world where there was no escape. The boy's friends and relatives searched for him and his family for a long time, but they were never found. All that was left was a strange, half-broken computer, on the screen of which flickered endlessly Minecraft. Days, weeks, months, years passed, and not a single trace of Michael's missing family could be found. The police and neighbours only spread their hands, and the boy's school friends said that a few days before his disappearance, he constantly talked about some strange mod in Minecraft, which seemed to have begun to affect reality. Part 2: Feedback. Years after the tragedy, Michael's house was put up for sale. No one wanted to live in the house because of its reputation, so the building sat empty for a long time. However, soon a new owner was found, a young family. James, Julia, and their son Victor decided to move into the house, even though there were rumors that something was wrong with it. They didn't believe the scary stories and attributed the disappearance of Michael and his family to something ordinary, perhaps an escape. The family settled into the house, and at first everything was fine. One day, however, Victor found an old computer in the basement that belonged to Michael. The screen was broken and the system unit looked dilapidated, but the boy wondered what kind of device it was. He decided that someday he would try to fix it and see what was left on it. Meanwhile, Julia began to notice oddities in the house. In the evenings, she heard some quiet footsteps on the second floor. It seemed as if someone was glimpsing outside the window, even though there was no one around. James put it down to fatigue and stress from the move, but Julia sensed that something was wrong in the house. One day, Victor brought an old keyboard and mouse he'd found in the attic into the room. He plugged them into the computer he found and tried to turn it on. To his surprise, the computer started up. The screen flashed, and the old Minecraft interface with saved worlds appeared before his eyes. Curiosity took over, and Victor decided to open that world. As soon as he did, the room fell into a deafening silence. Minecraft loaded, but the picture was strange, a deserted world, without trees or buildings. Victor began to explore the area, but as soon as his character came to a high mountain, the screen displayed the following message: "We have been waiting for you." The boy froze in fear. The screen began to blink, and the computer made strange, incomprehensible sounds. Suddenly, the character in the game stopped obeying his commands. It moved on its own, and after a few seconds, a silhouette appeared on the screen in the distance, a familiar character with white eyes. It was Herobrin. Victor tried to shut down the computer, but it did not respond. The mouse and keyboard didn't work, and the screen began to darken. The figure of the Herobrin was getting closer, and suddenly there was a heavy rumble of reality throughout the house. Things began to move on their own, and deep scratches appeared on the windows, as if someone from outside was trying to get in. Julia, hearing the noise, hurried to her son's room. As soon as she entered, she saw the computer screen begin to blink, and there was a strange sense of dread in the room. She wanted to unplug the computer, but froze when the screen said, "You won't stop us." At that moment, creatures began to crawl out of the darkness of the screen. The same mobs from the game: creepers, zombies, and skeletons. They were lifelike, but with a cold, hollow aura. Julia recoiled when one of the mobs came right out of the screen and started moving around the room. Victor, terrified, jumped toward his mother, but the mobs began to take over the space. They slowly filled the room like darkness, consuming everything around them. The Herobrin stood in the center of the room. his white eyes glowing with an icy light, and he seemed to be enjoying this chaos. Julia tried to grab her son and run out of the room, but it was as if her feet were stuck to the floor. The creatures drew closer, and soon they enveloped her and Victor. The last thing the boy heard was a quiet voice whispering in his ear, "Your family is never coming back. You are ours now." Several days passed before James, returning from work, realized something was wrong. The house was completely empty. Neither Julia nor Victor was home. Their phones weren't answering, and all of their belongings seemed to be in their places, as if the family had simply vanished. On the shelf was the same old computer Victor had found. The screen was off, but there was something ominous in the air. James tried to figure out what had happened, but as with Michael's family, there was no sign of it, just a strange feeling, as if someone was watching him. James called the police. However, the police officers found nothing suspicious. The case was closed, just like with Michael's family, but the neighbours began to suspect that the house was cursed. No one wanted to move in anymore. Meanwhile, the computer left in the house continued to work. Every now and then, the screen would turn on by itself and display the inscription that was now familiar to anyone who came too close. "We are here. We're not leaving." The computer was the last link between the vanished people and the real world. However, no one else dared to turn it on for fear of what lurked behind it. The house remained empty and became the subject of rumors and legends. The people of the town where these events took place whispered that one day someone would turn on that cursed computer again, and then the creatures from the game would come out into our world again to take another family.